you need to have secure access to your financial accounts. So today I'm going to provide the missing manual to secure your financial accounts. And there are 3 things you need to do. First, you need to set up text message authentication for your financial accounts. The second thing you need to do is you need to set a SIM lock code on your phone. And the last thing you need to do is set up an additional device authentication for your email accounts. I mentioned the 3 things you need to do to make your financial accounts more secure, but I want to explain first, how do hackers actually get your username and password, and how do they get access to your account? Well, broadly speaking, there's 2 ways that hackers get your information. First is through security breaches. So if you think back in the recent past, like the last 10 years, there's been a lot of security breaches. And keep in mind, not all of them have been publicly reported. Examples are like Credit Bureau, Experian, that got hacked. Capital One, its accounts got hacked. Also Yahoo email, there's a big account breach. And then more recently, Microsoft 365 email accounts got hacked. So that's one way that hackers can get a lot of information. And think about it, if they get your emails, they know a lot about you. They probably know your name by that point, and they'll know what financial accounts that you use. And they may have enough information about you where they can start to guess what passwords you might want to use. Now, hopefully you haven't emailed yourself your username and password, and that's sitting in there. But if you did, then that would obviously be exposed too. Sometimes there's even social security numbers that end up in emails accidentally. So hackers get all this data from breaches, and what do they do with it? Well, oftentimes the hackers that breach a particular company, they'll actually go and sell that off to other hacker gangs. So now your information circulating all around the globe in these different hacker gangs. Not cool. There's actually another way that hackers get access to your accounts, and this is what's called a phishing attack. In a phishing attack, you'll get an email that looks legit, but it's not. It's actually a fake email. And this fake email will usually say something like your password needs to be reset, or there's some error in your account that needs to be corrected, or they may say that you've won a prize and you need to collect it. These messages that you get will often have a link to a website, and if you take the bait and click on it, you'll be brought to a fake website. And the fake website will usually ask for your username and password. And that's how hackers can, get your username and password, because you actually took the bait, jumped on a fake message, and typed it in. But there are ways to protect yourself against this stuff, and so that's what I'm going to talk about. And I don't think people talk enough about how to actually secure accounts, and it's really not that hard to do. Okay, so step number 1, you need to add a text message authentication to your financial accounts. Now, the text message authentication, this additional method of authentication, is typically called 2-factor authentication, which is a bit of a mouthful, but the reason it's called 2-factor is because you're adding another layer of authentication. Your first layer of authentication is when you enter your username and password. And then after you enter your username and password, you will get a text message to your device, to your phone. And that text message will have a number in it, and you enter that number on the website. That additional authentication of the text message number is the second factor of authentication, and that's why this is called 2-factor authentication. All the financial websites have this set up where you can go and have 2-factor authentication set up, and these notices will be sent to your phone. Right? That's number 1. The reason having a text message sent to your phone is so important is because it's another thing that the hackers need to gain access to in order to gain access to your accounts. Think about it. If a hacker knew your username and password and you had 2-factor authentication set up, it wouldn't do them any good. Because they can enter the correct username and password as many times as they want, but they'd never get that extra additional code they needed in order to gain access to your accounts. And that's why setting up this text message authentication is so important. This is pretty cool, right? You got the 2-factor authentication set up on your accounts. What else do you need to do? Item number 2 is set a SIM lock code on your phone. Let me explain why this is important. So in late summer of 2019, Jack Dorsey, the CEO billionaire of Twitter, got his Twitter account taken over. It was hacked. And the way the hackers did this is they pretended that they were Mr. Dorsey. They knew his phone number. And they called up the phone company and asked the phone company to initialize a new phone with that phone number. And the phone company did it. Now that the hackers took over control of that phone number, they were able to get the text messages sent to their phone, and they were able to access the account. So that's called SIM swapping. So in order to safeguard yourself against SIM swapping, you have to do number 2, which is the SIM lock code. Different phones, different operating systems are a little bit different, but basically you'll need to enter a 4-digit code every time you restart your phone, or if you were to transfer your phone into a new device. This SIM lock code prevents customer service in a phone company from accidentally transferring your number somewhere else, because they'll need the SIM lock code that you provide in order to copy your SIM, gain access to your SIM. So that helps prevent hackers from, social engineering, that is calling up the phone company and ask them to move over your phone number to their device. Unfortunately, there's another type of SIM swapping. It's the same technique, but this time hackers pay somebody inside the phone company to illegally copy the SIM and make it swapped over to another phone. Now, I'll talk about those later on and how you can prevent against those, but it is still a problem. These SIM lock codes aren't 100%, but it's your best line of defense, and so I'm saying do it. So if you're worried about hackers paying somebody on the inside to copy your SIM card number onto their phone, it is a real issue. And what can you do about it? Well, the short answer is don't use text messages. I know item number 1, I said use text messages, and that's because most financial institutions, that's the only 2-factor authentication they offer is text messages. But some financial institutions like PayPal offer a different type of authentication. And that authentication is done through an app on your phone. With PayPal, for example, you can download the Google Authenticator app. And the Google Authenticator app on your phone will give you a number. And you use that number as your second 2-factor authentication. So even if the hackers got access to your SIM card, they still wouldn't be able to access the authentication app, and they still wouldn't be able to access that number. They would actually need your device, and they would need that device, your phone, and they would actually need your phone unlocked in order to get that authentication number. And that's why it's better than the text message being sent to you. Now, not all financial institutions offer this. So when you do see the authentication method via Google Authenticator, for example, you should jump on it and you should use it. Okay, now is the last part, number 3, secure your email account. So the best way to secure your email account, again, is this 2-factor authentication. You need to enter your username and password, and then you need to enter another piece of information in order to gain access to your accounts. This works out pretty well on some sites. They have a good, sophisticated system. The reason that your email is so important is because, number 1, your email contains a lot of personal information, and you don't want that personal information to get out. It can help hackers identify what institutions you use, what your username might be, and it'll give you hints, and it will give them hints on what passwords to use as well. Another reason you don't want hackers to access your email is because email is often used as another form of authentication by financial institutions. If you want to reset your password, often a password reset link will be sent to your email account. So if hackers gained access to your email account, they'd be able to intercept that link, go to the website, and possibly update your password. Also, if your account has been locked or you're locked out of your account, sometimes financial institutions will use your email and passing along an unlock code or a temporary password that you can use. So it's really important for these reasons to lock down your email account. Locking down your email account usually means turning it on to a more secure mode. In Gmail, I can tell you how it works. When I have my secure authentication set up, if I try to log in with my username and password on my desktop, the desktop web browser will say, please go to your phone open up your Gmail app and accept that you're trying to log in. So I have to go to another device, one that I've already been logged in, unlock it, go to that app, press a button to say, yes, it's okay, I can log in on this desktop. Now Gmail also supports that Google authentication code that I talked about, so if you prefer that method, you can do that too. And there are some pros and cons to each, but I would say each of them is really good. You should use them. You should use two-factor authentication on your email accounts, whether it's Gmail or Yahoo or Microsoft. And if your email provider doesn't allow for two-factor authentication, you should definitely find a new email provider. I'll make another suggestion. One suggestion that I would make is to get a secure note-taking app on your phone and use it. A secure note-taking app, by that I mean something that's going to encrypt the notes that you have. What are you going to use the secure note-taking app for? You're going to use it to write down some of your usernames and passwords for your financial institutions. And you're also going to write down notes on how to get through the security steps that they have. For example, you might want to write down security questions and answers, or you might want to write down which authentication method it uses, whether it's a text message or Google authentication. It's so confusing because all these sites have different rules for passwords, and we end up creating a bunch of different passwords and then we never remember what they are. And so what I do is I do take them and put them into a secure app. When you're selecting an app, you should look for a couple things. First, you want to find something that's encrypted. And usually you'll see in the app description that it says AES 128 or AES 256 encryption. Those are both good. You want an app that's free. There's plenty of free ones out there. And you also want one that's ad-free. You don't want to have ads in your app. The last thing that you want to look for is you want to look for an app that's been updated within the last 60 days. Because if it's been updated within the last 60 days, you know it's current and it hasn't gone stale and there's still developers working on it. Because security is a constant process. You can't just leave it. You might be thinking, a secure note-taking app with my usernames and passwords in it, that doesn't sound safe. Well, think about it for a moment. First, if you got your two-factor authentication turned on, even if a hacker was able to gain access to get your usernames and passwords, they still wouldn't be able to log in without your code. And if you think that you've been hacked and your secure messages are vulnerable, you can go through and change your passwords. The second thing I would say about the secure passwords is, and having them encrypted, is they are encrypted end-to-end, like on your actual device. And people will have to break the encryption in order to get access to them. But the other thing I would say is the risk of not remembering your passwords and your security steps is awful. I mean, I've been locked out of my accounts because I've forgotten my username and password. I've forgotten the security steps or the security questions and answers. And then it takes a while to get back in. Sometimes I have to call customer service, and even that can take a while to verify my identity. And it's a big time sink, and it's also not really that safe. So I think it's much safer to actually write down some of your usernames and passwords and put them in a secure encrypted file and get them locked away. Then you can always look them up when you need them. And if there are really some passwords, some financial institutions that you really care about, then you might want to commit those to memory. And if you commit those to memory, then you won't have to write them down. But I don't think that committing all of your usernames and passwords and all of your security steps and all of your security processes for all of your accounts is viable. And that's why I recommend taking some notes and keeping it encrypted on your phone. You know, other optional tips that I would suggest, the first thing I would suggest is create cool and fun usernames. You know, a lot of places now allow you to customize your username. You're not locked into your email anymore. You can create your own username. You know, and you can create fun and interesting usernames. This makes it much harder for hackers to guess what your username is. And then by keeping it fun, it's something that makes it easier to remember, right? You can be Silly Viking or Grumpy Robin or whatever else you want to be. And with usernames, you don't have to worry about capitals or lowercases or, special characters. None of that stuff applies. Yet it's just a great idea to have a unique username that's just really fun and not subject to all these arcane rules about uppercase, lowercase, and special characters that your passwords are restricted to. My last tip would be, try out two-factor authentication using the Google Authenticator app. I think that you should be able to sign up for a PayPal account for free, and you should be able to set up secure authentication via the Google Authentication app. You may have to create a new email account in order to do this because you may not want to mess up your existing PayPal account, but it's a great way to try using two-factor authentication using Google Authentication app without having to experiment with any of your other accounts. Because I know that using yet another app for your authentication methods can be kind of confusing, so it's good to have sort of a trial run on this stuff. I just did it straight away with my own PayPal account, and you can certainly do that too. Just take your PayPal account, turn on the two-factor authentication, download the Google Authenticator app, and it will walk you through the process. It's pretty simple to set it up, and it's actually kind of fun to do. Right back to our takeaway. What should you do? You should secure your financial accounts using two-factor authentication. Use text message if that's the only thing that's available. If there's additional authentication using a Google Authenticator app or a different authenticator app, then use that because it's even better than text messages. Number 2, lock your phone with a SIM lock card. It will prevent accidentally or unintentionally moving your phone number to a different device that you don't own. Number 3, lock down and secure your email accounts. There's so much valuable information in that, you want to keep it secure. So turn on that two-factor authentication for your email accounts. And those are the takeaways. I hope this helped. It's the missing manual for how to secure your financial accounts.